I'd like to call to order the Plan Commission meeting for February 6, 2024 at 5:02 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. 6:02, sorry. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
6:02, you are correct.
It's close.
Attendance roll call.
Commissioner Graff? Here. Commissioner Oliver?
Here.
Alderman Kubaki?
Here.
Commissioner Kazana is absent. Commissioner Buckmaster is not here right now. Commissioner Bartlett is absent. Mayor Petfalski?
Present.
Planner Chair Petfalski?
Here. We have a quorum. Mr. Buckmaster is on his way. He's stuck in traffic, but we have a quorum, so we'll start without him. Approval of the minutes from November 7th, 2023.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Consent business, resolution PC 002-2024, approval of a three-lot certified survey map for Cody and Alexandria Yeager, located on South Hannaberry Drive, west of Hillendale Drive, tax key number 2236.997.001. Resolution PC 004-2024, approval of a one-lot certified survey map for Daniel Gore, located at the southwest corner of Parker Drive and Racine Avenue, tax key number 2275.999.006. Resolution PC 005-2024, approval of a four-lot certified survey map for James Basler, located on vacant farmland along Hannaberry Drive, tax key number 2239.997. Resolution PC 006-2024, approval a second four-lot certified survey map for James Basler, located on vacant farmland along Hannaberry Drive, tax key number 2239.997. Resolution PC 007-2024, approval of a two-lot certified survey map for James Basler, located on vacant farmland along Hannaberry Drive, tax key number 2239.997.
Motion to approve and gross.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Old business for consideration, resolution PC 033-2023, approval of a rustic structure designation for Brian Huron, located at South 99 West 205-23 Parker Drive, tax key number 2280.999.021. Adam, want to give us an update?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So as you guys may recall, this has been on a couple of our past agendas regarding the request for Mr. Wren for the rustic structure designation for some structures on his property. Kind of to update on where we left things last at the last meeting back in November. The image that you see in your packets and on the screens kind of identify the buildings that are in question. We number all the buildings just for ease and consistency, so we all know which building we're talking about. I'm not worrying about giving them different names or anything like that. So where the last request stood, for lack of a better term, was the highlighted buildings that you see. So buildings 4, 5, 6, and 7 would potentially be removed. The barn number 3, the large barn structure, would potentially remain under the request of the rustic structure for Mr. Wren. And then buildings number 1 and 2 would remain as the buildings that Mr. Wren is allowed by right based upon the 2% of the lot size limit. With an additional 13,000 square feet of land being added from an adjacent lot. That was kind of where the proposal was last time. Plan Commission had a couple different discussion points talking about maybe adding other parcels to this parcel. There was some talk about when those buildings would come down, the idea of removing some of the buildings as the lots would be sold. So as the acreage got smaller that Mr. Wren was retaining, buildings would have to be taken down at that pace. There was talk about having a 5-year sunset to make sure that the buildings were compliant within a 5-year period, and that's really where things were left. So nothing new has been turned in at this time. Mr. Wren is here. He has an attorney with him that has kind of met with the city staff and city attorney to kind of go over some of the topics, and we're kind of here to pick it back up today to see what comes out of it.
Does Mr. Wren have anything to add? Anything new?
Yeah. Good evening, Attorney James Hammes. Hi, are we on here? I'm working with Mr. Wren on this, and as was explained by staff, we did have the opportunity, and I appreciate it, to meet both with staff and the city attorney to discuss the application as well as the ordinance and the conditional use process. I did make it clear then, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page on this. In my opinion, okay, all of the buildings comply with the rustic building ordinance provision. They could all apply. Nonetheless, what Mr. Wren has suggested as a way of moving this forward is to remove buildings 4, 5, 6, and 7 over a staggered period of time. But just so we're clear, the application is for everything, but we're willing to remove those. The resolution that you have in front of you would allow the designation, but what the resolution doesn't do is identify the period of time when the other buildings would be removed, and I think that's in the staff report. The proposal is that after the sale of Lot 4, and we would notify the city, that would then commence the period of time to remove 4, 5, 6, and 7. And there would be a sunset provision of 5 years. So in other words, the latest would be 5 years, or at the starting 30 days after the sale of the fourth lot, if that occurred further, earlier, before the 5 years. So, we're asking for approval of the resolution, which does incorporate the offer by Mr. Wren to remove the buildings, but either by separate motion or somehow in the record, we would ask that the Plan Commission formally recognize that the buildings that are not granted the status and that are being removed will be removed in that time frame. It's in the staff report, but it's not in the resolution. You know what happens is 2 years from now, somebody comes back and say, well, what happened there? Because here's the resolution. It doesn't, refer to the other buildings. So
Yeah.
you can either modify the resolution ultimately, by amendment and then have it put together, or do it by separate motion, because the resolution itself approves the rustic building designation for buildings 1, 2, and 3, but it doesn't say anything about 4, 5, 6, and 7 as far as when they're going to be removed. So I do think that needs to be addressed in any action you take.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
And staff does have a draft for the Plan Commission members, if we want to see, that can be talked about, that would kind of take into effect the things we're talking about here. The only one that there might be some tweaking in the wording is the question of fourth lot versus lots being sold. I guess I didn't, how we have to word that part, that might be tweaked a little bit different, but we can pass out amongst the board and to Mr. Wren's attorney if need be. Mayor, kind of where we're going to go with it.
So before we start making amendments to resolutions and everything, from a conceptual level, how does the commission feel about the proposal?
Well, to me, the big decision that we have to make here today is whether or not this qualifies as a rustic structure. Our definition of a rustic structure, and I took this from our records, is a building that is distinctly set apart and unique from other structures and buildings due to its construction technique, materials, age, local significance, design, or other characteristics. Is this barn truly unique, a one of a kind in Muskego?
Well,
That's my question. We've got numerous barns of similar age. What makes this particular structure unique, a one of a kind?
Well, I'll let Mr. Wren address that specifically, but I would point out to you, though, and this is one of the things that we talked about, is that your ordinance is in the disjunctive. In other words, your ordinance says that it has to be unique because it's set aside, because of design, because of use, because of age, because of historic significance, which is a term that's not defined in your ordinance. What does historic significance mean? I mean, it may mean something
Well, unique
different
is
to all
easy
five
to
of you.
define, though.
Pardon?
But unique is easy to define.
Well, but it's in the disjunctive. It has to be unique or historic or because of design. It's not all five of those. If you read the ordinances, it's clearly in the disjunctive. It uses the word or, not and. And I think the wording is at the bottom of page, is it 4 of the memo that you got from the planning staff? Any permanent any permanent accessory structure or building which is distinctly set apart and unique from other structures and buildings due to construction technique, materials, age, local historic significance, or design. So,
Not disputing the entire English language, but the commas do separate those items. So there's not ands between those. Those commas can be used as ors.
no, but you use the word or. If all of those had to apply, then the ordinance would read, the buildings due to construction technique, materials, age, local historical significance, and design. But it doesn't say that. It says or design. So the ordinance itself, I mean, the way it's drafted, quite frankly, it's rather vague. Okay? I mean, what's historic to me
That's
may
strictly
not.
your interpretation of that. I disagree with you, but go ahead.
Right, but my point is what is historic significance to me may not be to you, and you're I guess the determiner of what that is in this particular case. But age, and why don't you address that? I know we've talked about this before, but just generally
The thing
go
that I
ahead.
would say, you want uniqueness pointed out. Nobody builds 2-foot walls out of fieldstone. Nobody uses trees and cuts them and splits them in half. And Adam or whoever, if one of you guys could show it on those pictures, I have the pictures, you guys have all seen it before. It's whitewashed on top of bark, split in half. No, that is unique as could be. The shape, I don't know, they refer to that as a gable roof or something like that shape like that. We have a couple of buildings like that, as well as the way they were built and what they were built out of. Actual 2-inch rough cut by 8-inch by 10-inch by, not seen today unless it's special order. Unique, hugely unique. I mean, ask anybody, as a public opinion.
I don't
what
profess
uniqueness
to
would
know
be
every
considered.
barn in Muskego. I don't know if there's other barns in Muskego that were constructed in the same manner. I don't know that.
Well, they might
Well,
all.
when you build a new barn, they don't build it like that's unique.
Oh, no, it's
There's
unique to
other ones that they built like-
today's construction, but
Yeah.
was it unique at the time that was built, along with other barns that are similar? Again, unique, one of a kind.
Well, as unique as whether it's unique today. Not
So let's
That's the way I
step away from that part of it and talk about some of the other arguments. We can go back to yours and you can decide what you want to go on that. But some of the other arguments about, is it appropriate to maintain this with the type of density around? Do we want to allow him to keep this with, I guess looking at his proposal of thinning the accessory structures off his property that he's proposing while keeping the ones he has there until those other lots are sold. What's the thoughts on that? I mean, do we have interest in entertaining this at all? Are we just going to stick and say no? I mean, I guess I want to know.
I appreciate the, I'd say the response as an alternative proposal from where we started, I don't know how many months ago it is now. So I appreciate the effort. I think it comes back to the heart of kind of what your overall plan was in preparation for the subdivision in the first place. And this is a position I took when we first talked about it, in that we know, at least I think, that you knew that you had to sell this. And so you were willing to take that risk. And my take on it is you put these buildings at risk when you made that decision. So as a board, we have to decide whether historical significance is sufficient to take a stand on these structures, regardless how many there are. So you could do the math, I don't know how many different ways, and you could parse what structures need to go and what need to stay. But what we need to do is have firm ground relative to how we decided in the past on the square footage under structure on a given size property and how it relates to decisions we're going to make in the future. Because what I still see is an exception.
Correct.
And now it's a matter of how far are we going to bend?
Well, and what are your reasonable contingencies we're going to put on a conditional use?
Right.
And
Right.
that's how I'd like you to view it, is what, it's essentially a conditional use request. We're allowed to put reasonable expectations or alterations to his request. Viewing the area, what is appropriate? It's appropriate to go from everywhere it comes down. You got to meet the requirements of the square footage, or you can say, I guess what I'm looking for is consistency. Whatever you're deciding here is going to have some, reason determining what reasonable might be in the future.
Have we had any similar,
No.
is this so unique
First time
that
it's
we're
coming
setting
from.
precedents here?
We've had other rustic structures, but they've typically been for a single building, and I don't believe they were as large. It's been quite a while.
It didn't impact the 2% rule?
Not to this extent.
Not to this extent.
They
They always impacted some way. That's why people ask for
But
it.
not as excessive as these numbers were originally and
believe
even
so.
now? Okay.
If this structure is designated as a rustic structure, how does that affect the other buildings? So I know the two buildings number 1 and 2, because he acquired or because he attached additional land to that, he's able to keep those buildings.
Yeah, so let's say this is a vacant lot and he was building new. He could build, with attaching that land, he could build 1 and 2 new and have no problem. But that would pretty much max him out.
Okay.
That's why 3 is as a rustic structure. The rustic structure basically exempts it from the size limit. In theory, you can exempt it from a handful of other things, but size limit would be the most applicable one here. So it doesn't apply towards a 2% if it's granted the rustic structure. That's why 1 and 2 would stay as what's allowed by right, and then whatever would be granted a rustic structure would be exempt and not counting towards that.
So essentially what we're talking about is the barn.
Excuse me?
Pardon? Essentially what we're talking about is. Am I on here?
We are talking, well, that's correct. We're talking
Yeah.
about the barn, but we're also talking about putting conditions on for the possibility of allowing the barn.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
We're talking about the conditions we're going to put on allowing the barn.
Oh, yeah, I understand that.
So
But I'm
our
saying.
conditions may be every other building on a property has to come down, and then you can keep the barn. It may be you have to add one of those lots onto this one, and then you can keep the barn. It may be you can't keep the barn. We have the option of putting reasonable conditions on for this, and that's what we're discussing.
Right, reasonable conditions that are related to the conditional use request.
Right,
No,
right.
right.
But this conditional use, the biggest thing is it's going way outside of our accessory structure percentage. So if we're going to do that, what are we going to do to allow that?
Right, but see, that's where, and this is what we discussed in the staff meetings, that's where I have a little bit of concern, a lot of concern, but a little bit of, see, what you're really talking about is density. That's what you're talking about. Not, the concern that's being expressed is we have too much square footage of accessory buildings for this lot, and it exceeds the amount of square footage that is permitted for this lot. But that really has nothing to do with a rustic structure designation.
I guess I'd argue that.
Well,
I mean, it may not, but in the overall thing, the overall view that we're doing on this, it's part of the conditional use request.
true, but there's nothing in the conditions articulated in your code that establishes any relationship between a rustic structure designation and density of buildings on the lot.
I challenge you to find, that's why you have conditional uses. Almost in any municipal code, when it comes to a conditional use, the specifics of which, the state statute's clear on it. We just need to have reasonable expectations on that.
We can discuss that. I guess, I've got my view on it. We've expressed it as staff. We're here to try to work something out.
Oh, and we are
Okay?
too.
Yeah.
I guess I'm trying to keep these guys focused on,
Yeah.
on a part that I can defend later.
But,
Might not be the way, if it's rustic or not, it's what else.
but that's the reason that we suggested that, again, a way of handling that would be taking down 4, 5, 6, and 7 over a reasonable period of time.
Sure. And there may be some commissioners up here that would agree with that. Trying to figure out who those are, if any.
Here's where I'm at in this whole thing, is to me, the density is the biggest issue. And this proposal is no different than the proposal that we heard from Mr. Hearn 3 months ago. And my response is going to be the same. Either all the buildings, the barn can stay. I like the barn. Your neighbors have indicated they like the barn. The barn, number 3 structure can stay. Everything else has got to go. Or one of the contiguous lots needs to be withdrawn from the market and attached to this property, and then there's sufficient acreage to handle those other buildings. That's where I'm at.
So the fact that he's close to that, I mean, essentially he's, and correct me if I'm wrong, the proposal right now is, okay, as long as this lot remains unsold and vacant, this attached one, he hasn't gone through the legal part of attaching them to each other.
You're talking
Okay.
about that sub-portion of Lot 7?
Talking about all of lot 7.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So or one of the lots, I don't care which
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
really.
Contingent.
So if he keeps it and doesn't sell it, he can keep these buildings, but once he sells it, the buildings have to go.
Right.
But that's essentially what we're proposing now, right? Through the resolution as written,
No,
You mean like the potential amendment?
potential amendment, yeah.
The potential amendment would take into effect removing the highlighted ones in a time frame, which that has to be a little specified. But in that scenario, yeah, as he would remove properties, what we'd do is we'd calculate what lots does he own, we'd calculate the 2%, and of the ones that are highlighted, at whatever point they would be below the limit of what's allowed, that's when they'd have to get rid of them. And I don't know if it's the sale of lot 4, because there's all different lot sizes, different lots have different sizes to them. So we'd have to do the math depending which lots would be sold. So depending which lots were sold first, if a bigger lot were sold first, that might kick in the removal sooner. That was our original thought, but that could be talked about. But that's still with that 5-year sunset cap.
Correct.
And that would be in this scenario, if you grant rustic structure, which would allow 3 to stay in the long run, looking 5, 10 years, plus 5 years down the road.
Alderman Buckmaster, you're not an alderman anymore. Mr. Buckmaster, you're new to the conversation here. I know you've been following this. What are your thoughts?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I've been quite clear. They all would have to go in order to meet that density requirement for me, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I'm willing to go with the good alderman's plan. I think he's got the best out and the best off-ramp for this to work. That's as far as I would go. Otherwise, I am not in favor of it. I've made that very clear. But I think the Alderman has a good off-ramp for you.
I don't know if it's the Alderman's off-ramp, it's just one that we have.
Yeah, well, it's an off-ramp that we discussed at the last meeting, and it was made very clear that that was probably your best option. And here you are, same thing.
Well, but you didn't get it, we didn't get a decision at the last meeting.
You had 2 months.
Pardon?
There were 2 months, basically, from the last time we met to now. On our options, they were made very clear.
Well,
So whether or not you read them or looked through them, they were very clear.
I read the minutes, right, and it's the same thing that we're talking about here. You know, there's a acknowledgement, I just heard it, that the barn is a rustic building, but we're not willing to allow the rustic building because you have too much square footage unless you take something else down.
Well, I'm not sure
If
if
I'm
we-
wrong on that, please somebody correct me.
I don't know if anyone's come to
There
that
was no
conclusion. We're just talking,
acknowledgement
yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not sure if we're at that point. We're just at a point of what would be the conditions to approve the conditional use?
But see, again, if the barn's a rustic building, okay, then I think the plan commission has to make that finding. If you want to say, well, it's a rustic building, but we're going to grant this conditional use subject to these other conditions, then I suppose you can do that, and whether that stands the test of time will be seen.
Yeah, and respectfully, I think we can come to our conclusion at whichever pace or, you know, however we follow to get there. So, you know, I don't think we necessarily have to come to that conclusion first.
Okay.
Gentlemen, thoughts?
I'm supporting the last
So the last
position,
so
which is add the square footage necessary of the adjacent
So if we-
properties so
so if he
you can
keeps-
do what you want with the buildings.
He's got five, so essentially, bottom line, he has 5 years to take down 4, 5, 6, or 7, or
You be or mayor or all of them?
all.
Okay, I have to make sure I heard that right.
Yeah. Take down 4, 5, 6, and 7. If one of the adjoining lots, or as the lots are sold, that square footage would have to be taken into consideration for what can be left.
The theory would be when a lot would be sold, we would look at the lot size, calculate everything left that Mr. Rin owns.
Yep.
Because it's an ownership, right? That's what we're talking about. It's just straight ownership. If he owns it, it's part of this 7-lot CSM, we would subtract what's allowed, calculate where it's at, and if we say, hey, oh yeah, because of that now you're only allowed X amount of square feet, if it's before that 5-year time period, that would then dictate which one of 4, 5, 6, or 7 has to come down first. Is that what I'm?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to clarify. Do you
Okay.
understand that?
Yeah, I do. Sounds, meticulous, but as
I mean,
compared to-
you could do it, you could just say after lot number 3, after lot number 2, you can give a number of lot sales after X amount of lots are sold.
That's
That might be
mechanics.
easier to
That's
track, but.
Yeah, that's what
if-
I was saying.
I was
That's
just trying to.
mechanics. You could help us what's easier to accomplish, because I don't really care individually what building goes as much as at a point where it now is, it defines, let's say all 3 of those have to go, bang, all 3 have to come down on that date.
On the staff level, what we thought was most important was having a sunset, because Mr. Rin's other lots that are adjacent to this, I think, took 15 years, 12 years to sell. So if they would take a long time to sell,
It's too hard to
the
track.
idea is to
You
kick
wouldn't be
that
able to
sooner,
track
So, I mean, I think we have an end goal of 5 years or less. What happens in the middle? I think that's what really has to be figured out if you're going to allow what's proposed.
So when all lots are sold, only one building can remain on that.
The way it was proposed by Mr. Rin, which are kind of a draft amendment is written, is that 1 and 2 would stay always no matter what. Those would be call them as day-to-day buildings, not taking into effect rustic structure. And he's asking for 3 to remain as that rustic structure then. So, I mean, I guess if you're willing to grant rustic structure designation, 3 would be there forever, let's say, and 1 and 2 would be there forever as his day-to-day kind of users, and everything else would be down, at least at the 5-year mark or later.
Does Plan Commission have leeway on density? Allowing?
By right, no. I mean, rustic structure allows that. That's what the rustic structure does. But If you don't grant rustic structure, 2% is the 2%.
Well, what is our enforcement on this?
Um,
I mean, so 5 years go by, I mean, what's the,
I mean, if 5 years comes and he doesn't remove them, we'd issue a citation. We have an ordinance that says you have to follow conditions of the plan.
Well, you get
Commission approval.
injunctive, you get injunction
you can do citation.
relief then.
Yeah.
That's what
So-
you do.
I didn't hear that before, but
No, we've gone through the citation route.
Well-
It gets expensive
Yeah.
and they get paid, and, you know.
That's probably the least of my worries. I'm
Right.
sure
Our
Mr. Wren, if he
goal
agrees
is
to it.
compliance, not
Yeah.
punitive.
Yeah.
But to me, that doesn't solve the problem. The problem's still a density problem. At the end of the rainbow, I'm sorry, when all the lots,
When all the lots are sold, the extra structures would be gone.
Except for 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
right,
Well, 1 and 2 are entitled, they're entitled to keep as a matter of right. They're really not part of the discussion. They're,
well, they are from the standpoint of density of the whole parcel. And whether or not it's, number 3 is ruled as a rustic structure.
but whether it's a rustic structure under your ordinance has nothing to do with density on the lot. It doesn't. As a matter of fact.
It does. If we say it's not a rustic
All right,
structure,
let's keep
it's
the conversation,
dense.
let's keep the conversation between us,
Okay.
the discussion and debate.
In any case, at the end of the rainbow, once all the lots are sold, we're going to have buildings 1, 2, and 3.
Correct. Under the proposal that's.
Under the
being-
proposal.
That's being floated right now.
Right.
Yes, and it comes down to, can you live with that?
And I stated my position before. I don't believe we can.
I
don't
agree.
believe I can.
I agree.
I agree. So if that's where you're at, then someone make a proposal to deny and we can move forward, deal with it then.
well, how do we just vote?
Well, if you're, unless you have another option, I mean, I'm not going to keep bringing this back every month. So either you come up with another proposal or vote this one down. I mean, the proposal I think that was out there was probably about his best chance of keeping it.
I agree. So do we just vote on the way it is now, or do we?
Well, right now you have, it doesn't, if you're going to deny, it doesn't matter what you're
Right,
voting on, you're just
so-
denying it. And you're denying it because it doesn't meet any of the criteria.
Correct.
So I guess we'll do a roll call vote and state why you're voting no. And my thought is it doesn't meet any of the criteria for rustic structures, in your opinion. But
So there's a motion to deny on the floor. Is that
well,
correct?
no one's made it yet.
I'll make a motion to deny the request.
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Please state why you're voting no or yes.
Commissioner Graff.
No, I deny it. I think it still is on the owner's shoulders to expand his property sufficiently to include number 3.
Commissioner Oliver.
No, I believe the property needs to fit all ordinances, whether it's with the structures and density that's been so noted.
Alderman Kubaki.
No, I don't believe that the barn qualifies for a rustic structure.
Commissioner Buckmaster.
No, I don't believe the density requirements are being met adequately per the CUG, and I do not believe the barn meets requirements for a rustic structure.
Mayor Pifalski.
Yes.
So the motion to deny is approved, 4 to 1.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Moving on with the agenda, new business for consideration. New business for consideration, Resolution PC 001, 2024, approval of a building site and operation plan for Mander Collision and Glass located at South 106 West 16197 Loomis Road, tax key number 2293.996.001.
Move to approve.
Second?
Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. So yeah, as the request was noted here, it started with the request for more parking. Mander Collision took over this facility not too long ago. Obviously, business seems to be doing really well for them. The site, as it sat previously, had fairly limited parking on the site. There just wasn't a need with the way the business was run under the prior business. But they are looking at adding a handful of parking stalls. Right now, there's 13, and in the end, the total number of parking stalls would be 38. As far as the parking goes, staff does not see any concerns or issues. It will go through, when they do their formal permitting, which would happen after this. Our engineering department will look at it from the land disturbance side to make sure there's no issues, but there shouldn't be. It's pretty basic, pretty straightforward. One thing that comes up on our commercial sites sometimes is the question of curbing. The Plan Commission's pretty much taken the stance that when a site is in a more developed area, we usually require curbing for any new parking, but in this area, none of the sites around there have curbing, including this site, so because of the rural nature of the area and not having curbing on site, we are not suggesting curbing here. One of the things that was observed when we did our typical site visit was that there were 3 large shipping container crates on site, and after talking with the development team and the ownership, we learned those were needed as part of their business operations because business is good and they have a lot of repairs. They need place to store product and parts and materials. Typically, outdoor, those crates aren't typically something we want to see as storage outside. They did get a color that matches the building, but they don't look ideal. We'd rather see something more permanent. So one of the things they mentioned as a solution was expanding their fenced area, which the site plan shows. And they were going to extend it with a taller white vinyl fencing. I think it was 9 feet tall. With a new gate to help enclose that area. The only thing that staff suggested off of that was the idea the existing fence is shorter with wood, and the idea of having 2 differing height fences and different materials we thought would look kind of out of place. So our recommendation and the way the resolution is written is to have the new fencing installed, replacing the old fencing to match so it's all uniform, same height. We think it will adequately cover the storage containers behind it and will help give them more space to store stuff outdoors too. As they're not allowed to have any junked or wrecked vehicles parked outdoors, this gives them some more space for that also. So staff is recommending approval with that condition.
Comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Resolution PC 003, 2024, approval of a preliminary plot for Gulfview Estates subdivision located along the north side of Ryan Drive, tax key numbers 2255-979-002 and 2255-998-001.
Move to approve.
Second?
Anna.
Thank you, Mayor. So this proposal was in front of us many, many years ago. I want to say 15 plus years ago. I think, but when the housing market was in a way different place than it is now. The same person has owned it for that time, and they're kind of realizing now is time for them to want to do something there. So they've been working with staff over the last year or so to kind of look at options. One of the options they didn't look at before, but they did look at more recently, was the idea of doing a conservation subdivision. The idea of more open space, smaller clustered lots, permanent preservation areas of at least 50%. So this proposal did come in front of the Common Council and Plan Commission back in October of 2022. They did receive approval contingent on the plat approval for a conservation plan development zoning district. So that rezoning was granted already. Basic overview of it is their yield plan originally showed 15 lots. They are allowed up to 4 bonus lots. There's a handful of reasons listed in the supplement as far as why they requested the 4 bonus lots to bring them to a total of 19 lots. So that is the request, 19 lots. and over 50% permanent open space. You know, they're preserving wetlands, they're doing enhanced stormwater. There's a handful of features they're doing that are things the conservation ordinance recommends. The most important one that I think is really worth noting, which I think is a really great win for the city and the community residents, would be the idea of they own land that extends from Boxhorn on the north to Ryan on the south. And this is an area where, you know, if anyone that lives in the area is going around the block, it's a very, very long multi-mile block, where here they're proposing and willing to make a public trail that connects from the south end to the north end. And I think that could be a huge amenity for this neighborhood. As there's kind of bigger neighborhoods on the north end of this and the south end of it, I think it could be a great community feature. There are also separate private trails they are proposing within development, which is great, but I think this public portion would be really critical and helpful. We just have noted in the resolution that is a feature that is proposed, and that the trail would have to be built so the standards as to be determined by the city Public Works and Engineering Department at the expense of the developer. The development would have public roads, public water, public sewer extensions with lots around approximately the half-acre size. Staff is recommending approval subject to the conditions.
Questions or comments? Anyone? Seeing none, all those in, what? None. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Can someone that voted in the majority of PC 033-2023 bring it back on the table?
I move to reconsider.
Second.
The way the motion was made and the way you guys voted might be confusing, so I need you to re-vote on that one, because the motion was to deny, but yet you guys all voted no when you were talking. So can you guys...
That's right.
Can you guys come back,
Okay.
re-vote this? Your motion should be yes to deny, not.
Yes, okay.
So, you can just say yes with the reasons you stated in the past, and we can go move forward.
So just to be clear, if I could, so the actual,
The motion was to deny the request for the rustic
Understood.
structure.
Understood.
So the votes should be yes if you don't want the rustic structure, no if you do want the rustic structure. All right? Roll call vote.
Commissioner Graff,
Yes, due to size and not approval.
You can just say your previous.
Based on previous statements.
Commissioner Oliver,
Yes. Previous statements.
Alderman Kubaki,
Yes, based on previous statements.
Commissioner Buckmaster,
yes. Yes, based on previous statements.
and Mayor Pefalski.
No.
So the motion to deny the request for a rustic structure was approved 4-1.
Thank you. Any miscellaneous business?
Nothing.
Otherwise, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned at 6:45.